What is going on, everybody? Citizen back with a World of Warships video today, and this time I'm going to be featuring the German Tier 10 cruiser, the Hindenburg. Now, this game was recorded before the release of patch 7.6, in which the Hindenburg's reload was nerfed by 1 second. Now, this video I want to use to explain why the Hindenburg was nerfed by Wargaming. I don't particularly agree with them nerfing it in the first place, but the Hindenburg was an exceptionally strong ship, so bringing it down just a little bit does even it out with a little bit of the other Tier 10 cruisers. Now, with the buffs the Zhao and the Moskva got, I don't know if it necessarily needed this DPM nerf, but it's in the game now. Just have to figure out how the Hindenburg is. It shouldn't be a colossal nerf, but it's not going to really change the playstyle of the ship. Now, in this game, I did go to the sea cap on Islands of Ice. I definitely recommend that for pretty much every ship, except maybe these US light cruisers if you spawn on the other side of the map. But you really don't want to go A on Islands of Ice because it severely limits your ability to push into B, and you can really only control one cap if you go to the A side. But over here at C, I just want to keep some pressure down on the enemy team. Enemy Des Moines gives me broadside, immediately switch to AP. I almost goofed that shot up because I aimed way too high. That's why you saw 8 over pens and only 2 pens, but thankfully I did take them out. So what we're going to be doing in this game is showing off really the main strengths of the Hindenburg and why it's kind of a little bit of an oddball ship, because the German line was released by Wargaming as these extremely high alpha AP striking ships, the German cruisers, that is. Now, the problem with German AP is there's 2 issues with it. The first is that they do not have the out-of-bounds angles that the US heavy cruisers and the British light cruisers get, and so their AP tends to bounce a lot, especially against angled targets, of course. Now, the other problem is that they have very light shells, so while you do have good velocity with the German ships, the AP tends to lose a lot of its penetrative power, especially at longer ranges. So once you're starting to get out over 12 kilometers, German AP is very lackluster in a lot of ways. So to compensate this, a long time ago, Wargaming did buff the German high explosive. Now, it went through several buffs. It first got an increased fire chance and a little bit of increased alpha. This high explosive used to be some of the worst in the game. But then they also gave it 1/4 shell pen. Now, if you didn't notice right there, I was actually being outspotted by the Monarch. British Tier 8 battleship has crazy concealment, but I was waiting for my friendly Republic to go charging in, which he did, and so I'm just going to lay the DPM down on him. But what this buff to the HE did is it actually made the Hindenburg a superior fire spammer to most of the Tier 10 ships at its tier. Now, there are some exceptions to that. If you get a Des Moines in the right position, it's actually the best fire-starting ship in the entire game, but that's, very situational. Whereas the Hindenburg just pumps out so much raw HE alpha damage, and because you have 12 shells, and if you run fire and flags, demolition expert in the fire flags, you're going to get a pretty high fire chance, and with 12 guns and an 8.8 second reload, you're going to set a ton of fires, making this ship extremely deadly for cruisers and battleships alike. Now, the Hindenburg is okay when fighting DDs. Now, I say okay because while you do have 12 guns, the HE alpha on a DD isn't the greatest, and you can't really expect to hit all 12 shells on most salvos. So you'll hurt DDs. They'll definitely not want to fight you, but there are better ships at this tier for fighting DDs. The Zhao is actually probably a little bit better. Now, you do actually have the option to run the fantastic German Hydro, which does actually give you quite a competitive advantage, but with your concealment being as bad as it is in the Hindenburg, you typically won't be hydroing out smokes that often. It does happen, but not in all cases. Now, what I'm going to want to be doing in this game is spreading the fires around. You see I set a double fire on that Monarch. I expected him to repair, that's why I'm watching him right now, so I immediately switched over to the Montana, and I want to go get fires on him. And you can see right there, 5,000 high explosive alpha with a fire. That is a salvo that if he lets the fire burn is going to do 15,000 damage, which is insane. And then, again, you see another 5,000 damage salvo right there with just the high explosive alone. And we're just going to keep shooting at this guy. Now, I did notice the Monarch is charging into our Republic. Republic did make one mistake here in which he kind of charged 2 Montanas and a Monarch. And the Republic, while you feel like you want to be able to charge in with its speed, it does not have any armor. It's like the Conqueror, but you don't have a super hill. So when it gets focused, it goes down fast. And I decided I need to go ahead and focus the Monarch. I set a double fire on him again, so I know he's pretty much dead, so I need to keep shooting at him. Take one last salvo, and he does play the smart thing and goes into concealment. However, I get 8 shell pens, and he does go down. So, what I need to do now is just kite away from this enemy Montana. Now, he does have another Montana to support him in the background. Now, that Montana hasn't actually shot at me, but I do not want to close distance with a Montana just because he might have a second one in reserve. Go ahead and turn back to spawn. It does take my front guns off of this fight, but if I kept going, I was eventually going to blue line, and I was just taking myself even further away. In this path, I'll hopefully be able to get back to the cap. And then there you can see some of the Hindenburg's really good armor. Its bow and stern is overmatched by most battleships at this tier, not 15-inch guns, but most, so like your 16-inch gun battleships and above. And now you would want to just be as angled as possible at the Hindenburg. Enemy battleships like this Montana can still hurt you, and if they do, 10,000 damage salvos, which are kind of common, about 8,900, you will feel that because it's about 10% of your health. Like this salvo coming in right here. Sorry, not this salvo, the next one. I'm just joking. I want to go ahead and just keep laying down some HE spam on this guy. Now, you can see already the massive amount of damage I've done this game. I don't have that many shell hits. I only have 9 fires, and yet I've done 125,000 damage. So, again, the Hindenburg, its DPM was probably the reason why it needed to be nerfed. And that's what Wargaming did, was they just lowered the DPM a bit. So I completely understand why they did it. I can disagree with it just because other cruisers got buffs at the same time. But you know what? It is what it is. You kind of just have to learn to accept that. Now, go ahead and keep shooting this Montana. He is retreating, which smart move. You can't really push into a Hindenburg unless you're a Republic or a Yamato, of course. But I just keep putting down some pressure on him and just waiting for him to go away. Now, I do fully expect this Montana to actually stop shooting at me and go dark, which is what he is eventually going to do. And because he is creeping out of my range, I am going to turn back to this cap. Now, my biggest fear earlier was that I would be putting myself into too close of a position against 2 Montanas, where they could have gotten a crossfire, or the volume of fire would have just been too punishing for my ship. So, now that I have one Montana in full retreat and the other one not really doing anything, I want to completely push into the enemy team. And go ahead and secure the A cap. Now, my team did a unique strategy on this game where instead of going to A, B, or C, B, we went to all 3. Of course, we didn't get C early game, but my team is going to pretty much collapse under the enemy team's pressure at all of the caps. So I am going to have to push really hard here just to ensure my teams win. And if you look at the health bar mod I have at the top of the screen, the enemy team does have a massive health pool advantage over us, which I do need to go ahead and try to negate. Otherwise, it could lead to some serious problems for us down the road. Now, the second Montana does show up. You see right there. That was about 7,500 damage, and it set a fire. And he immediately makes the insta-rep, so that's a pretty big mistake. I see a lot of people do that. I don't know why. If a tier 10 cruiser, or any good HE spamming ship is spamming you with HE in a battleship, do not rep 1 fire. That is asking yourself to get lit on several more, and because I know he used his repair, I'm going to exclusively be shooting him. Yes, there's a lower health Montana that I could probably shoot and damage, but with this guy, I can just rack up a ton of fire damage on him and hopefully get him to a much lower state of health to where he's more manageable for me and my team. Now, I do have a friendly Shimakaze pushing up into the C cap with me, and hopefully he can get some good cross torps on these guys, get some floods, possibly chain some fires as well. I do keep shooting at the one Montana. He is going behind an island, so eventually I will be switching targets to the other Montana. But as long as I do have a shot, I just want to keep the pressure on the one guy. He does eventually go dark, and so I am nearing the cap, and I'm just going to keep pushing in. I need to plow through it and then try to get myself over to B. If you do notice, the only other ships we have left is the Zhao to my right, and then the Big Fred on B and the Kurfürst at A, which is pretty bad for us because that means our battleships are isolated, and an isolated battleship is very vulnerable to cruisers and destroyers, and that is exactly what the enemy team has over there. See, notice how their battleships, these 2 Montanas, are completely isolated to me and the cruiser and the Shimakaze, and we're picking them apart. That's the exact same thing that's going to happen to our battleships. So we need to go ahead and try to get through these 2 Montanas as quickly as possible and support them before my team collapses under the pressure. Now, I do want to give a compliment to my friendly Zhao here. He does immediately open fire and starts helping me out, and he is going to be very instrumental later on in this game. Without him, I don't know if this would have been a win. spoiler alert, is a win. So go ahead and, keep lighting fires on these Montanas. You can see just the stupid amount of damage that Hindenburg is able to pump out. Now, these Montanas probably weren't the best players. Their shots on me were highly inaccurate most of this game, and if they were landing the shells, they would be able to do decent amounts of damage to me. Like, you'll see right here, this Montana is going to take 2 salvos at me. He will do a fair amount of damage, and if these Montanas had been able to shoot me all game, it would have been significantly more dangerous. So I like to assume that the enemy I'm facing is a good player until they prove to me that they are not. That's typically how I play, and I don't want to underestimate someone, because if you underestimate somebody, that's usually when you're going to get your ship blown up in the process, so you probably don't want to have that happen. Now, unfortunately, my shim is sitting in a smoke screen, so I do pop my spotter plane. Now, it's not for the added range here, but it does spot the Montana immediately for me, so I can get shots back on him. He does take a shot at me, and then you see right there, 8,900. Now, that does hurt a lot. Now, imagine if there were 2 Montanas doing that to me every 30 seconds. You can see that damage is going to add up pretty quickly. One thing I always thought before I ever got a Zao or Hindenburg was that when I was playing a Montana and I would just get these super low damage salvos, it was always very unrewarding, and I would feel like I didn't do anything. Now, whenever I get 4,000 damage on a Zao, I get happy because I have a Zao, and when you take 4,000 damage in a ship like that, it hurts. So definitely be shooting at your cruisers, guys. And if you have a Yamato or Republic, definitely shoot at cruisers. And if you have a Republic and you find a Hindenburg, shoot at this thing. The Hindenburg, I think, is naturally countered by the Republic just because of its rate of fire and its overmatch ability. Now, we did take out both of the Montanas here. You can see that the enemy team does have, I believe, a Bismarck and a Minotaur pushing on our GK, who's hiding behind an island up in A. And we did lose the big Fred right there. So the enemy shim is going to move into B and start capping it, and I am spotted by planes. So I need to get out of C cap and move as fast as possible to B. Now, as fast as possible in the Hindenburg is definitely not a speedy ship, so it's not going to be the quickest maneuvering or quickest to get from point A to point B, or in this case point C to point B, but do have to try to get there as fast as possible. Now, I do have a shim behind me. He's not really doing anything, and the Zao has fallen back a little bit. I think he just didn't want to get shot at by those Montanas. So I do push into B. I get spotted by the shim, but it looks like he is spotted by some scout planes above him, so I do immediately start shooting at him. Now, the enemy Zao actually does something smart here, and instead of remaining dark and playing like, most people would and just not doing anything, he actually opens up on me immediately. Now, both of these ships have the potential to really hurt each other with HE. I think the Zao is a much better fighter in this sort of situation than the Hindenburg is, just because the Zao HE punishes the Hindenburg a lot more than Hindenburg HE punishes the Zao. That and the Zao is a significantly smaller ship, and at range, Hindenburg shells tend to get very floaty, and so it's a little hard to hit. And again, going back to that shell velocity, that's also why I recommend running the reload module on the Hindenburg, just because while you can get 20-kilometer range with the Hindenburg, unless you're in a clan battle situation or ranked, that 20-kilometer range is kind of a joke. So I run the spotter plane for situations which I do really want that range, but for the most part, I think the reload is the far superior option. Now, do keep shooting at the Zao. I do angle away from him. I don't want to be broadside to a Zao. For those of you who have never shot or been shot by Zao AP, it can be devastating. So go ahead and pop my Hydro so the shim does not get any surprise torpedoes on me, and I just want to keep pushing towards him and into the B cap. Our friendly Grober Kurfürst has gone down in the A cap, so eventually we will have a Tier 8 battleship and a Tier 10 cruiser coming to support the rest of their team. Now, at this point, I am getting very close to the Shimikaze who did smoke up. Now, the Shim does not know whether or not I have Hydro or not, so he needs to play it very cautiously. And what does he do? He backs out of his own smoke screen to shoot me. And now I know that I'm 5.9 kilometers away from him. I just turn in towards him and just get those spots immediately. And he's going to make a bonsai decision right now, which I kind of commend him for that. As you can see there, 4,500 damage, but this is kind of where I meant, like, the Hindenburg isn't the best against the DD. While I have the Hydro and I can keep him spotted, the HE shells aren't doing as much damage as I would hope they would. See, you can see right there, he angles in, and that last salvo didn't really do much, so go ahead and keep shooting him. Now, I know he is torping, and I do make one slight mistake here. I should have turned in on the Shimikaze, not turned out. I did lose the ability for my turrets to keep up, however, the secondaries do decide to go ahead and pick up the Kraken and the Close Quarters Expert for me. See some AP coming in, that's either from the Bismarck or the Minotaur. Definitely the Minotaur, since there was a follow-up salvo. I wasn't able to dodge this torpedo, unfortunately, and it is a Shimakaze torp, so it does hit for 20,000 damage, and that is not a torpedo you want to take at all, no. So at this point, I need to go ahead and just hold this cap for my team, just to end it. Now, with the kill on the Zao that my Shimakaze and the friendly Zao did pick up, we did secure the win here. So me dying isn't actually going to be detrimental. I actually kind of just want a little bit more damage, hoping the Minotaur or the Bismarck will show up. So that's exactly what I'm going to do here with the time remaining in this game. I'm just going to kind of park it and be. Now, both of these dudes are going to be able to pretty much spot me at the same time in the case of the Bismarck, or outspot me by several kilometers in the case of the Minotaur. So I do want to be angled away because most likely they're both going to be shooting AP at me, so I want to protect my Citadel and essentially be able to kite away once the time arises. I do get detected here, and I did full stop, but the second I got detected, I did put some more power to the engine, just because I do not want to be full stopped once they start. You can see a nice little compliment from one of my teammates in chat, carrying the team at sea, which it was appreciated. Now, enemy Minotaur does pop up at the same time as the Bismarck. They are shooting at me, so go ahead and just shoot the Minotaur. There's no point really shooting at the Bismarck since he's so far away, and he's actually impossible to shoot at. So just keep some HE spam on the Minotaur. Now, I am just going to be shooting at him and just trying to run. I don't want to give him too much broadside, because if he does start connecting and getting pens, he could actually put my ship down very quickly. Now, he is turning wildly, and I thought here he was going to try and execute a full turn out for some reason. I should have just stuck with HE. I switched over to AP, and it was here I realized my AP wasn't going to do anything, because he immediately turns back in and bounce. So, unfortunate, and that was my last salvo of the game. It does close up in a nice win. So, get all the achievements in the world. Looks like I got a Confederate high caliber, Dreadnought, Wither, Close Quarters Expert, Kraken, Arsonist, you know, all the achievements. Nice little 3.37 base XP on the game. Breaking 3,000 base XP is kind of a little hard right now in World of Warships, but if you guys liked what you enjoyed, I am live on Twitch most days. I'll put the link in the description, and I shall be getting a Des Moines game out relatively shortly as well. Thank you for stopping by. Have a great day.